Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for skipping my mother's 5th wedding to go to a job interview at ASDA? For the past few months, I, 26 female, have been unemployed and desperate for a job, and I finally got an opportunity for a job at ASDA, a popular British supermarket. But the date overlapped with my 52-year-old mother's 5th wedding. Over the span of my life, my mother has been in over 50 relationships, only 5 lasting more than 2 months. As a child, this really distressed me as I had many random men coming into my house frequently, and my mom was pretty much neglecting me throughout this. My dad left when I was 4 after my mother cheated on him with 6 guys. I found this out a lot later, and I didn't have contact with him until I was 18. After all of my mother's relationships and 4 divorces, she finally insists she has found the right man and invited me to their wedding 2 weeks before my interview, and I realized they were the same date. I figured that going to the interview would benefit me more than the wedding and decided to go to the interview instead. I assumed my mother wouldn't mind as I had attended every wedding before that, but I was wrong. She was very angry at me, and my whole family have been calling to tell me how much of an a-hole I am for missing my mother's big day. I did get the job though, and now I am financially stable enough to afford rent for my 1-bedroom flat, and I do not regret a thing. Am I the a-hole? Last story. Am I the a-hole for not letting my child's mother stay with me? Don't want to get too far into the relationship aspect, so I'll bullet point it. Started dating Kara at 16, married at 22. Me/Kara both 36. Daughter came when we were 23. When our daughter was 6, Kara came to me asking for an open relationship. She said she had gotten bored and wasn't sure I was her forever person. I told her that wouldn't be happening. She said she wanted a divorce then. We went through that whole process and we ended up splitting custody. I later learned that she had been talking to other guys before we ever had our talk. So, safe to say, I'm not a huge fan of her anymore. We have no contact outside of pickup times. I typically don't ask my daughter questions about my ex unless it's of vital importance. But I did notice about 5 months ago that Kara had changed pickup locations to an apartment complex. I asked my daughter what happened, as I knew Kara had remarried 4-ish years ago, and my daughter told me that the guy kicked her and her mom out after they divorced. I asked what happened, and my daughter told me that her mom found out she was infertile, and the dude divorced her on the spot. I wasn't too worried about the situation as my daughter appeared fine emotionally. Took her to therapy to make sure, and she wasn't complaining about the apartment. So last week, my ex showed up at my door asking if she could talk to me. She said she had no money after her apartment raised rent. She was struggling to provide for our daughter, and her ex took a lot of her money in the divorce. She was probably gonna get evicted at the end of the month. She asked if she could live with me for a few months till she could save up for a place. I told her absolutely not, and that I'd probably go back to the court and seek a custody alteration, because I'm not gonna have my daughter in an unstable environment. My ex told me that won't happen, and she'll fight that in court. I told her she didn't have the money for rent, let alone a lawyer, so maybe she shouldn't fight it and instead work on finding somewhere to live. So my daughter has learned about the situation. I was speaking on the phone to my parents about it, and I think she overheard me, and she's furious at me, saying that we have plenty of space. I have a 5-bedroom house with an in-law suite in the basement. It's a walkout and it has a full kitchen. So my daughter thinks it's cruel I won't let her mom stay in the basement for a few months when we hardly go down there. I told her that wouldn't be happening as her mother has made her own decisions. It is not my responsibility. Also, I didn't say this to my daughter. I've become an attractive option to divorced women. Pool definitely helps. Lol. So I don't want my ex-wife living here because it could look bad to some of the women I hang out with. Kara texted me and offered to pay for utilities and do chores if that would change my mind. My daughter really wants me to help, but I don't feel like it. And I frankly don't really want to help this woman. I like my house situation the way it is. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for naming my daughter the same thing as her half-sister? Last summer, I, 33 female, started sleeping with this guy, 45 male. In December, I found out I was pregnant. And while I'm pro-choice, I decided to keep it. I was already feeling like we were at the beginning of the end relationship-wise. So I said, look, I'm pregnant. I've made this decision, but it's up to you if you want to be involved. And it's okay if you want to bail. I have the resources to do this alone. He said a baby wasn't something he wanted. And I said that's totally fine. I won't even put your name down on a birth certificate. We can treat this like a sperm donor situation. He agreed. After that, he predictably started pulling away and we broke up. 3 months post-breakup, when I was 6.5 months pregnant, this woman DMs me and says, "Hey, were you sleeping with my husband until recently?" It turns out that he had a wife and a 13-year-old daughter. His wife is in the process of getting a divorce from him and gathering evidence of what turned out to be a wild amount of infidelity. So she was relatively cordial and believed me when I said I had no clue. Even before we'd broken up, I told him that if it was a girl, I wanted to name her Samantha. Samantha isn't the actual name, but it's a similar long girly name with multiple nicknames. It was my sister's name before she passed away. And even before that, it was a name I loved for aesthetic reasons. We always talked about naming our daughters after one another before she passed. He expressed dislike, but I jokingly but not really said it wasn't really his decision. After everything came out in the open, I found out that the reason he was against the name was because his 13-year-old daughter is named Samantha. Now that everything is out in the open, he said, "So what are you going to name her?" And I said, "What do you mean? I already told you, Samantha." And he said, "You can't do that. That's my other daughter's name." I said that he lost naming privileges a long time ago. And if anyone asked, I was happy to make it clear that I'd been the one to pick the name. I also reminded him that I still wasn't obligating him to be involved in this in any way. And given how he'd lied, I frankly didn't want him to be. But if and when he chose to be involved, I was going to hold him to it and expect child support / visitation / etc. Which from his point of view is not ideal because he doesn't want the responsibility of care. And especially doesn't want the responsibility of child support and asset splitting. Rather, he wants to have his cake and eat it too. I take on all the responsibility. There's no paternity test, a blank father's name on the birth certificate, but he still gets to have opinions, which frankly suits me as well because I don't want to be legally tied to him. But when I told my friend, she said that while he didn't deserve any courtesy, it was an unkind thing to do his 13-year-old.